First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. Nick Wright is already talking. He had a big night last night.
What a night in American sports.
Tell people why. Don't let him guess.
Well, I mean, the greatest athlete in world history showed everyone why he's the greatest athlete in world history.
Danny's not playing anymore.
Cam Newton had a hell of a game. There were good late-night NBA games. There's so much going on.
Or in other words, all of the pinups that Nick has in his bedroom.
I have no pinups in my bedroom.
All of those people did really well last night.
Those are scurrilous rumors on the internet.
Moved in, right, and haven't decorated.
You know what?
Anyway, let's
You guys aren't going to be able to steal my joy from me
your
this
first
morning.
true love, LeBron James.
Yeah.
Knicks were hosting the Cavaliers last night. Little tension in this one. LeBron got into it.
Chill, Frankie Nicotine.
Just a little bit. Just a little pushing and shoving with him and Enes Kanter, a rift that started before the game. Nick might explain that later. Knicks looked great early, leading by as many as 23 points.
What happened
But
was...
then came the fourth quarter, and then came LeBron, and then came carrying the team on his back. It's a story we've heard before. James, with the help of 19 fourth-quarter points from Kyle Korver, led Cleveland to a 104-101 comeback win.
Right in your eye, Porzingis.
Here is LeBron James after the game.
I knew we had another half. Didn't know I was going to get snatched like that early in the third, but I felt if I got back in, I could still make some plays to help our team win.
I don't care who you are, king, what do you call yourself, king, queen, princess, whatever you are. You know what, we're going to fight, and nobody out there going to punk us.
I'm the king, my wife is the queen, and my daughter is the princess, so we got all three covered.
Well, I'm glad that LeBron got to the bottom of that because I wasn't completely sure how royalty works, and now I know. All right, so Nick, let me start with you. While you're happy and excitable and all of it, are you more impressed that the Cavs came back, or are you a little bit worried that the Cavs had to come back against the Knicks?
No, I'm not worried. The only thing people should be worried about is if you wanted the Cavs to exhibit effort or concern or any regard for these games against Eastern Conference bottom feeders moving forward, they're not going to. Not when they show they can come back from 23 down and still win the game in the fourth quarter. What I'm impressed by is, and this isn't hyperbole, as Cris would say, this isn't overstating it. What I'm impressed by is quite simply one of the greatest individual fourth quarter performances we've ever seen. The Cavs were down 82-68. With 9:19 left in that game. With 1:23 left, they were up 100-97. That's a 32-15 run. LeBron James scored or assisted on 30 of those 32 points. That is more points than he scored or assisted on in the famous LeBron James is officially the greatest player in the world game against the Detroit Pistons in the 2007 Eastern Conference playoffs. LeBron generated 13 open threes for teammates in that run. They hit 7 of them. It was total and complete control of the offensive end of the court.
Well, it's hard to generate threes when they set a pick and they cross the ball. Like, you can't be totally responsible for a guy getting open. Now, he can throw the pass.
Okay, correct.
But I think that's a little sensationalism.
Okay, so maybe we can parse the definition of the word generate. LeBron passed the ball to guys who had gotten themselves open, who had run action to get open, or to guys who were open because the defense was so focused on the greatest player in the world, whatever it is. But LeBron's passes resulted in 13 open threes, 7 of which were made. And on the defensive end, he decided for a few minutes to check the 7'3" guy I'm told is a unicorn and totally shut him down as well. So listen, usually beating the Knicks is no big deal. In these circumstances...
So now it is, though.
Under these circumstances, Cris, when you're down by 23, when it looks like the game's over, when the Cavs appear to be sleepwalking, and then they flip the switch and LeBron totally dominates his opponent, that matters. That resonated.
Well, Jenna, it was really 2 games, all right? It was the first 3 quarters, which the Cavs, the most exciting thing that they did was catch the subway. And Ty Lue, if the second unit does not bring them back, I think it's on the board that Ty Lue and LeBron doesn't play the rest of the game. But the second unit got hot, changed the momentum in the game. They subbed out 5 players, and then they decided, you know something, we're going to play and try to win this game. But I've seen the Cavs do this season. I saw them do it last season. It's not pretty to see. So this was not a great basketball game. It was a tremendous finish. The first 3 quarters of the basketball game, the Knicks dominated the Cavs. The Cavs are not a good basketball team. They are not a good shooting team, all right? They have one superstar in LeBron, and they don't have enough shooters. They don't play any defense, and they can't rebound. So that's what I saw at the game.
Well, but hold on. So 2 things. First of all, let's be fair about what actually happened with the second unit. When the second unit came in, when they subbed 5 in, 5 out, the Cavs were down 17. When LeBron came back in the game in the 4th quarter with 10 minutes left, the Cavs were down 13. So the second unit...
But the momentum of the game had changed.
They stopped the lead. The Cavs were getting blown off the court. I agree with you.
Thank you.
But I just didn't want... It's not as if the second unit brought them back. LeBron brought them back. The second unit kept them in the game. Is that fair?
Yes, they were getting ready to go to the locker room.
Yes, agreed. No. The Cavs, Cece, it was not only 2 separate games. It was, as you mentioned, it was a bad basketball game for 3 quarters. Not just because the Cavs weren't playing well. It was a lot of missed shots. It was sloppy. It was...
My biggest problem with LeBron didn't play real hard for 3 quarters. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's a waste of money. As an entertainer, as an elite athlete, like, to me, it's not something I'll ever be comfortable with. He was just cruising. He was just cruising through the game. Like, I didn't know when he was going to turn it on.
But he did,
but
right?
You knew he was going to.
Yeah, but the game could have been out of reach. Right. They could have not put him back in at the end of the game.
But, Cece, the fans got their money's worth in that game, right? Like, LeBron did turn it on, right? Mm-hmm. Those things did happen, correct?
I don't know if I could say my money's worth because they were down 20, Nick.
It was a great game. Everyone in that
Okay. What were you saying at 9 minutes in the 4th quarter?
Oh, it was
awful. No. So how can it go from an awful game to a great game? Because of 9 minutes. The 9 minutes was a great 9 minutes.
Cece, that we see sporting events all the time, football or basketball, that are...
But just call it what it is, though. Just
the Super Bowl was not a great game for 2.5, almost 3 quarters, and then ended up being one of the greatest games, right?
I wouldn't say it was one of the greatest Super Bowl. It was the greatest comeback because 3 quarters of the game was boring.
Okay.
So it can't be a great game.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Is there something to be said for the fact that this was a Cavs team that before this, their 11th game or something?
14th game or something.
Before this, maybe they would have just said, all right, we're down 23. It's against the Knicks. There are 82 games. We're fine. We're going to hang out. We'll chalk this one up to a loss. And they didn't do that. They actually really poured some heart into it and tried to win.
I don't think that's what it is, and I only say that because I get why you'd say that. But I've watched every game this team's played this year but one.
They're not good.
They've been trailing in a lot of 4th quarters. The big difference yesterday, Jenna, was that they made their threes. Like the LeBron coming in, getting some shooters out there and trying to bring them back with threes has been a strategy they've had. Now, once those threes start going in, then your point, I think, is very valid, which is once you cut the 23-point lead to 17 to 13 to 6, now you're fully locked in. It's a playoff-type atmosphere.
Korver was sensational.
He was sensational.
You guys always say there are 3 things this team hasn't done, right? Mm-hmm. It's the skill, it's the chemistry, and it's the heart or effort. Mm-hmm. So yesterday the skill came through with the threes. Mm-hmm. They only had heart really in the 4th quarter when they all finally came together.
Yeah, but I don't want to... We can't... Yeah, but aside from that, how was the play Mrs. Lincoln this? We can't overlook what we saw in that 8-minute stretch from 9:19 to 1:23. Here were how the Cavs scored. Channing Frye, 3 assisted by LeBron. Kyle Korver, 3 assisted by LeBron. Kyle Korver, 3 assisted by LeBron. LeBron James and 1. LeBron James free throw. Dwayne Wade, 2-pointer assisted by LeBron. Kyle Korver, 3 assisted by LeBron. J.R. Smith, 3 assisted by LeBron. Kyle Korver, 3 assisted by LeBron. Dwayne Wade, 2-pointer assisted by J.R. Kind of screwed up the streak. Channing Frye, 3 assisted by LeBron. And then 97-97. With Cris Porzingis in his face, what everyone wanted to see, one-on-one, the king against the unicorn, right in your eye.
That guy's 7'3". You think he can guard LeBron? Like, that's not a good matchup.
Well, then why? I mean, Cece, that's the matchup the Knicks were fine with.
Sometimes
they could have sent a double team at him.
It's basketball. Sometimes you switch off on a guy.
Right.
All right. Like, it wasn't like
send a double team at him.
It wasn't like Hornacek said, you know something, at the end of the game, you know something, we're going to put the big fella on LeBron.
You know who wanted to have the big fella on LeBron? The big fella. Because he was smiling and giddy about the opportunity. It was one team...
So now we can predict that's what he wanted. Like,
I don't know that we can predict that's what he wanted. I know that in the moment he was smiling and excited. I know they didn't send a double team at him. I know that the Knicks probably thought if this possession ends with a LeBron James step back three, we are good with it.
Yeah, they'll take that. Right. Of course. He took the shot that they wanted.
Exactly.
It's a make or miss league. He made that shot.
I think to your point earlier, when you talked about the Patriots last year in the Super Bowl, you didn't walk away from the Super Bowl saying, the Patriots are amazing. You just did it. And you didn't say that was an amazing game. You said they escaped and they barely won, and they're lucky to have won.
Yeah, listen, if the question is, did the Cavs play like a team that can win the championship last night? No, they didn't play very well. But the NBA is an 82
If they played the Warriors now, the Warriors would beat them 7-0.
Okay, that's fine. But, Cece, you mentioned what the Cavs are missing. You said they don't have enough shooting. Well, Isaiah Thomas is going to be taking Iman Shumpert's minutes. You said they don't have enough rebounding. Well, Tristan Thompson's going to be coming back. So in the meantime, just
analyze what I'm seeing. Or you want me to stay in the fog until January?
No.
Or maybe till May?
No, but
analyze what I'm seeing.
Okay, but what you're seeing is not that the Warriors would beat them in 7, because that hasn't happened yet. So if you're going to talk about what would happen down the line, you've got to be fair and talk about the players that will be there down the line, right? Like if we want to talk about last night, I've conceded they didn't play well for 3+ quarters. But that doesn't, to me, overshadow what we saw at the end, which was one of the best individual fourth quarters I've ever seen. And I don't think you disagree with that point.
No. Yeah, it was a great 9 minutes. Jenna, I caught the subway and was home on my couch for the finish.
Nice.
Cece was taunting me.
I was on my couch
because I've seen Michael Jordan play in the Garden, and he actually came and put on a show.
For 4 quarters?
That wasn't a show.
For 4 quarters.
Yeah, you're right. And Jordan, people don't know this. Jordan never missed a shot in the Garden. He never lost a game in the Garden. He never subbed out in the Garden. Jordan in the Garden was 55 every night. That double nickel when he came back after retirement, it was that every single time he ever played. People don't know that.
Welcome back to First Things First. And welcome to future Hall of Famer Ray Lewis is with us.
What up, Ray?
Good morning.
Good to see you, brother.
How
are you?
Good to see you today.
We are not going to talk LeBron right now. We're actually going to put LeBron down for a quick second. We are going to discuss other things. You approve?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. But we are going to talk some Drew Brees and the Saints. New Orleans has ripped off 7 straight wins after starting the season 0-2. Not many people had New Orleans winning 7 games all season. But don't count Drew Brees in that group. He says he believed in the Saints from the start.
Did I think we'd rattle off 7 in a row? You know, I'm not sure, but I think I knew that we were much closer than people gave us credit for. I knew that the tide would turn at some point, and you hoped it would be sooner than later. You just need a little bit of validation for the process and for all the hard work and dedication that we all had put in and the expectation level that we had for this season.
All right, let's talk about the Saints a little bit, Ray, because we have all these teams that even though they have similar records, we seem to throw up there when you're talking about the playoffs and the postseason, and yet here are the Saints quietly impressing a lot of people and marching their way through the season after that 0-2 start. How surprising are the Saints?
How many legendary quarterbacks probably do we have left in the game? 5? 4?
If less,
5?
yeah.
Yeah.
Drew Brees is definitely one of them.
Yeah. Sure. Yes.
Right? But I'm going to take you to a mentality. Sunday, against the Buffalo Bills, they put up 41 points. There was 1 point in that game where they actually ran the ball 24 straight times.
Yeah.
That's a mentality, CC.
I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you. I don't care. It's coming. And what can you do about it?
What can you do about it? And so you ask yourself, when you start to see this formula, 2009, very, very similar formula for the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees, the reason why he says what he says, right, that I thought we was way closer than we were. Because if he gets any help defensively, this is the same formula that we saw in 2009. There's no clear-cut favorite in the NFC right now, right? Philadelphia Eagles, but that'd be a heck of an NFC championship, right? So I just think when you see what Drew Brees is doing, what he's able to do as one of the 5 legendary quarterbacks left, he sees that I may have ability to go back and do this one more time.
So why are we talking about all the other teams that are 6-2?
Because we didn't anticipate this. Like sometimes it takes our mind time.
5 weeks?
Yeah, it takes our mind time to adjust.
This is our problem. We go through free agency. We go through the draft. We swear up and down we know the NFL. Right. We go through the summer. We go through camp. We make our list. This team's going to be good. Right. But in your mind, you have to leave a space open for 4 teams coming from nowhere.
Nowhere.
Okay.
That's the way the NFL has
Every year.
been. There are no dominant teams.
Yep.
So this is what we see. When we had the 98 team, yeah, we were excited we got Randy Moss, but you know when our season changed? When Brad Johnson got hurt and our backup, Randall Cunningham, went in. And you know what? We realized, just like Drew Brees, we wasn't that far away. Now, didn't nobody else see us coming, but you make slight changes. The difference between the good and the great teams and the talent level in the NFL, it's so on an even playing field that 1 or 2 players can make a difference. And if you give Drew Brees, if you give Aaron Rodgers, if you give Tom Brady, if you give any of those guys a top 10 defense, they're going to win 10 games.
Well, that's the thing, Ray, that is so unbelievable about the Saints, and one of the reasons that the way they're playing right now, they absolutely, you could make the case they're the best team in the league. Like that's on the board for them. Over these last 7 games, they have a top 3 defense and a top 3 rushing attack. So if I were to tell you going into the year, the Saints are going to have a top 3 defense, top 3 rushing attack, and Drew Brees is still there, you're going to think what? That, oh, well, that's a dominant football team, and that's how they've been the last
Well, I
7
can
weeks.
tell you by experience, I know what that formula looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you can play hard-nosed defense and run the football the way that they can do it. Mark Ingram right now, I think, was inspired the moment they brought Adrian Peterson.
Absolutely.
Like, I think if you saw the way he started to play the game when Adrian Peterson was there, the way he was running the ball,
And
that's a different
I have
mentality.
to add, he works out at the facility
Yeah.
that we work out in Boca. And you are absolutely right. He was coming off of his best season. And when he came back to the gym, when they signed him, he had it. Like, listen, this dude is not getting ready to replace me. So, little Mark, you're right about that. He came into this with a chip.
Yeah, then you got a 2-headed monster in this young kid, Kamara. You see the way this boy, they're the thunder and lightning type of thought process, right?
Yes.
And so you ask Drew Brees, if I can hand the ball off, if you're Drew Brees 24 straight times, then late in January, February, that's the formula, man, for going back to the Super Bowl. So
If I'm remembering correctly, and I may not be right, so tell me if I'm wrong, Chris McAllister, as a rookie, played a lot of snaps for you guys. Do I have that right?
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and he was an impact guy as a rookie.
Yeah.
Okay? That is the corner, and again, tell me if I'm wrong. Corner is one of the hardest spots to make an impact as a rookie. Like to come in, we saw the Panthers, for example. They started 2 rookies last year. It was more basically, we're going to take a step back to then take a step forward because we're going to have to really grow from it. Marshawn Lattimore coming in as a rookie and instantly being an impact player, it's like found money for the Saints. Like they drafted Lattimore not thinking he's going to come in his rookie year and be a Pro Bowler. But like, so when you have that to a defense, it's like signing a big-time free agent without having to spend the money on it.
But so even when Cris came in, right? When you funnel everything to make sure that he's not in always one-on-ones, right?
Yes.
So as our defense, we made sure that he was getting the help and we was using him for what his strength was. Cris was big, fast, physical.
Yes.
So absolutely. So we'll put Cris in a 2 coverage and say beat the heck out of whoever comes out here. And that's all you got to do and break up and make these tackles in the backfield. Now, if you put Cris in one-on-one at that young of an age, that's a totally different ball club. That's exactly what the Saints are doing. They're putting their pieces in the right places to be successful. And that's why when you sit back and watch them play football, you're saying, when they went to Buffalo, and I'm like, wait a minute. If the Saints do what I think they're going to do in Buffalo, to put up 41 and give up 10, that's impressive. I don't care who you are.
And what you said you saw before, Alvin, we know Mark Ingram Jr.
Yeah.
And we know of his level of play. And he's even more motivated coming off his first Pro Bowl season last year.
Yeah.
But Alvin Kamara, I'm going to tell you who he is.
Tell me.
He's a combination between
let me think.
Darren Sproles and Pierre Thomas.
Wow.
And that's when they used to win.
Wow.
All right. But they got it in one player.
One player.
All right. So he runs between the tackles.
Absolutely downhill.
You get him on the outside.
He's a scat back outside.
And then also in the matchups in the passing game.
Yeah.
So now when you add Mark
got a hybrid
to that, and with Drew Brees, where you can call any play at any time, that's the winning formula. That's the familiarity that you see.
Absolutely.
All right? I just came up with that one out of my...
That was a great hybrid.
I like
when
that
you said
one,
Darren
though.
Sproles, I didn't know who the other player was going to be.
waiting.
Yeah, 2 Saints, that's a great one.
Let's talk about Drew Brees just for a second, because Tom Brady is 40 years old, and all we keep discussing is, well, how much does he have left, and what's left in the tank, and where can he take this team? But Drew Brees is going to be 39 in January. He's knocking on that door. He's right there. We're not talking about whether he's on the decline or what, but he happens to have these 2 running backs that could give him a little break to really take him deep into the season. Let's talk about what Drew Brees' ceiling is and where you see his longevity, and what has been the reason for his success
I
so
just
far.
truly believe this. And, you know, we go through injuries, we go through up and down seasons. But when you get to the point where Tom Brady and Drew Brees is, where I went through it my last few years, it's no longer really about the physical. It's about the science of the game. It's about putting people in the right places to help you be successful. That's the ability Drew Brees has. The ability Tom Brady has that ability to put the right pieces in the right places. You add Cooks to Tom Brady game right now, that's a totally different thought process. And that's exactly what Drew Brees is doing. These guys play the game from a science, not just a physical side. So the physical side, yeah, it comes along. Do you take care of your body? Any professional takes care of their body.
Yes.
Right.
Anybody who's serious, yeah.
Drew Brees understands the personnel, the groupings, where guys like the ball, when do they need to get in the run, when do they need to get out of a run, and also why we playing? Drew Brees playing for a contract. Drew Brees is motivated. Like, he don't know what he's going to do next year or into the future. So Drew Brees is one of the consummate professionals.
Yes, sir.
We don't give him credit. Because we always like to talk about Aaron. We always like to talk about Tom.
Yeah.
But Drew Brees at 5'11" is a beast. He's one of the greatest players that ever played this game.
Ever.
And if you give him a running game in a top 10 defense, let alone a top 5, this is what we're going to see.
Well, and the reason that we don't talk about Brees nearly as much as we talk about Tom or Aaron is just because the team hasn't had the success.
You're right.
Since they won the Super Bowl, they've won 2 playoff games. They've been 7-9 in 3 straight years. Now, if you look at Drew Brees' career stats, pretty damn consistent.
Yeah, it ain't his fault.
Exactly right. Like, Brees has been the one constant. Well, aside from the other constant, have been terrible defenses the last few years.
Yeah.
Like, if you'd have just told me they were going to have one of these 2 components this season, a very good defense or a really good running game, I'd say, oh, that team could win 10 games instead of 7-9. All of a sudden, when they get both, that's why they could win 12 or 13 games for the first time, or just the second time since they won the Super Bowl.
This is the one team you do not want to play at home.
Oh, play in New Orleans?
You do not want to play in New Orleans. So be careful to let them possibly get a bye in the first round. Yeah.
Yeah, you get a lot of distractions the night before the game.
Moving on to Martellus Bennett and the Patriots. The tight end claims he was waived by the Packers because he wouldn't play through his shoulder injury, but within the week he signed with New England, and instead of resting his shoulder, he miraculously suited up and caught 3 passes from Tom Brady. Many question if the whole thing was just a ploy to get out of Green Bay. Bennett addressed the issue on Monday. Take a listen.
You know, after trying to get it fixed and getting waived, you just hit that, you know, you got that vengeance in your heart, you know, and you just kind of like, all right, that's how you're going to do it, then let's go ball.
I'm curious what you think, Ray. You have a problem with the way that Bennett left the Packers?
You know what? I don't. I'm going to tell you why. We're in a different time, right, to where at one time staying where you was going to stay that's where your legacy ended up being.
Derek Jeter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Only a few people can really do that.
Right. And now it's not. Now it's what's the best fit for me personally.
I got bags, I will travel.
Yeah, where do I go? And I think the guys, to their credit, are catching up to the business. The business says, if I don't need you anymore, guess what? I'm going to find a way to cut you, whether it's cap problems, whether you're a problem in my locker room, whatever. So guys are saying, what's best for me at this point? And so for Martellus being there last year to win a Super Bowl, if there was one window of opportunity open after Aaron Rodgers goes down, then what you're coming back to is New England. I don't know.
Here's listen, and I get called a player's apologist at times. Because I think it's unfair the way when teams cut a player, no one criticizes them. When players hold out, everyone criticizes them. I think the media is really skewed to supporting the franchise instead of the players. The reason this struck me as a little different was Martellus didn't just come out and say, I would like to be traded. He didn't come out and say, you know what, please cut me because I don't want to be here with Brett Hundley. He said, my shoulder's so bad, I need surgery that's going to end my season. That is what got him waived. Then when he got picked up by a team that still has a really good quarterback, how does he no longer need the surgery? That's that's the part of this that I felt was different than even what Martavis Bryant did. When Martavis was like, I don't want to be here. Like, let me go somewhere else. Saying you need a surgery and then no longer needing the surgery.
Nick, he still needs surgery. There's hundreds of players playing week in, week out. They need surgery as soon as the doctor's telling them, you know something? I think you can make it for another 8 weeks. And then you know what happens? Immediately, as soon as your season's over with, you're under the knife getting operated on. So he didn't make up a shoulder injury. He's got a bad shoulder injury, and if the team was in the playoff hunt, he would probably be able to gut it out. But what you think he went to Green Bay for? You think he went there for the bratwurst?
He went to play with Aaron
What you think he went there for? The sauerkraut?
To play with Aaron Rodgers.
For the climate? You think he went there for that?
But what's keeping players from everyone doing that? I mean, they saw him do it, so maybe everyone's like, you know what, I could have some surgery now. I mean,
the team did this. The team did this to him.
Right, but he did it knowing that's what was going to happen. He didn't know
they were going to waive him.
Right.
He didn't know that. That team decided to do that. They didn't have to waive him. And it's stupid to waive him because he's a veteran player. Once he's on the roster, his salary is guaranteed for the whole season. So New England, what do they do best? You leave your garbage out on the side of the street? They pick it up day and night, 24/7, and they will use your trash against you. And he will be a contributing player to a good football team down the stretch.
Yeah, everybody's doing this now. You can go to any sport. I mean, take the injury out of it, right? Because this is what we're going to try to focus on and say, oh, well, was he hurt and was he not hurt? There's many times, I promise you, that Cris Carter has played with an injury that needed surgery but held out because of the possibility.
At least 3 times.
At least. And I can tell you, I played with
ankle,
too many.
Foot, and shoulder.
All
of them, gutting it out. Next day, you know something, when the end of the season, you have your ending physical. And you know what the doctor says? Hey, Ray, you know that thing we've been shooting up? You've been taking painkillers? Yeah, it's torn. It's worse than I thought. You need surgery now. So this goes on in professional sports. Look, he played his hand the right way. They're out of it.
Which is why I like what he did. I mean, look, I like what the opportunity that he said, okay, this is the way Green Bay going to play it. Then guess what? I'm going back to New England, right? Who has a good chance of possibly going back to another Super Bowl.
But New England claimed him, though.
Right.
So
they picked up the rest of his contract the whole time.
Absolutely.
Okay. But in the waiver claim, okay, just to let you guys know, New England's that much better. The waiver starts with the worst team.
Right. Every team passed on him.
Cleveland could have taken him.
Everybody passed on him.
Everybody passed.
The belief, he said, he told his agent to tell all the teams, don't claim me because I'm having this surgery. And then when it was New England that claimed him, he decided he wasn't going to have the surgery, which I understand. That part of it is his prerogative. Like, that if Cleveland would have claimed him, would have said,
2 weeks ago, when Seattle traded for Dwayne Brown, there was another player included in that trade, right?
Jermaine Kearse. Not Jermaine Kearse. I'm the other wide receiver. Someone will tell me.
Lane.
Yes.
The corner. Jeremy Lane, the corner. Did he pass the physical in Houston?
No.
No, and he went back.
Oh, and he went back to Seattle?
Seattle.
Did the Seattle doctor pass him on the physical?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's the same thing.
We're back to the same scenario.
You guys don't see it.
Right.
It happens every day. There's hundreds of players playing, needing surgery. But because it's football, in no other sport, they put it off until the end, and then they play you compared to him playing them.
So let me ask you one other injury question in the division.
Can you dunk?
Were you a good athlete? Hey, listen, I said I was going to might have been
a bicep curl?
Listen, I'm not offended by the fact that Ray probably thinks I couldn't dunk, and I could, so we both have this thing in common.
You got that on footage?
Yeah, I do.
I need to see that.
All right, that's fine. Let me ask you this question, though, before we move on. Did you see what Marvin Lewis said about his running back, Jeremy Hill? Jeremy Hill, who's kind of been demoted after having his best year. He had, I think, 12 touchdowns 2 years ago. Yep. He's a pending free agent. Jeremy Hill is elected to have season-ending surgery. Marvin Lewis came out and said, I thought he could have played through it. Like, to be totally honest, essentially. He said, you know, I didn't think he needed to have surgery. Now he could have had it at the end of the year. I thought that was out of bounds for a coach to publicly basically say to the world, I think the guy's either not tough enough or making a selfish decision, whatever it is. What do you think of Marvin Lewis publicly saying that?
You know, I don't know because I'm just getting this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just getting this. But I think every coach looks at every situation different as well as every player different, right? They don't look at every player the same way. I mean, there were times in my career, guaranteed, that people looked at me and said, oh, you can play. And I'm like, maybe, but not at the level you think I can play at, right? And so I think that's kind of the difference of looking at this young kid saying, come on, man, you can tough this out, right? But he's saying, you don't know what I feel like inside.
There's one other question for both you guys. So like the Pats, for example, and there's a lot of teams similar to them, very secretive about their injuries, right? They don't want their players ever discussing their injuries. They don't want people to know. As a player, how frustrating was that if you knew you were hurt, the public didn't know you were hurt, and people are coming to you asking about your performance? Like if you had a bad game, you knew it was because you weren't at 100%, but the world doesn't know you're not at 100%.
Yeah, we don't make no excuses.
None.
That's the way we play. If I went out there and suited up, if I was in there 60 plays, I'm responsible for the tape. No shoulder injury, no ankle, no torn calves, all that stuff. High ankle sprain, all that. There is no excuse. When you go out there, your tape is your tape, and you're responsible for it.
Yeah, you can play through pain, but you can't most of the time get through injury.
Yes, and there's a difference.
And there's a big difference, but we have decided even sometimes to play through injury.
And we believe that we can play good, even hurt.
Yeah.
Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by FS1 NFL analyst Ryan Leaf. Hey, Ryan, welcome to the show. Welcome to our little morning routine over here.
It's a 4 a.m. Wake-up call from me Pacific time today. So
4 a.m., we've all been up for like 14 hours. We would kill for a 4 a.m. wake-up. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be in New York. I'm really happy to see the show doing well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. We talked about it a long time ago.
Yeah.
As far as you coming on the show. For those who don't know, Ryan and I share a certain passion that we have in our life. And for those who don't know Ryan, know his story. It's an incredible story. And to be able to have you as one of my guests and a friend of the show, it's a pleasure. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, Ryan, let's put you right to the test. Sunday was a rough one for Dak Prescott. Get to work, Ryan. For Dak Prescott, who was sacked 8 times in a loss to the Falcons. Prescott struggled without star running back Ezekiel Elliott and left tackle Tyron Smith. The second-year quarterback has a tall task ahead of him now, playing against the 8-1 Eagles on Sunday. So, Ryan, I ask you this. Did this game prove how badly young quarterbacks like Dak need a great team around him? When you think about where Dak could have gone and the other systems he could have played in, does the team really make the successful quarterback?
Well, I think everything gets lost in the mix a lot of times is that because we talk so much about the quarterback position or a star player, this is the ultimate team game. If you do not have the pieces in place around you, you can't be successful in this league. Cris can attest to this. It simply is a matter of, and we're going to find out a lot about that with them losing their left tackle. I mean, he was the stalemate for them to be able to protect his blind side and allow things to happen. And we don't know how long he's going to be out.
Right.
But Tyron Smith being out is going to be a significant factor for that football team.
When you say, oh, sorry.
In making your judgments as a quarterback, making decisions in the pocket. Now, how different? We know a center is very critical. And if the center is undersized and can get bull rushed and knocked back into your lap, there's a set of problems presented there. If your right tackle with a right-handed quarterback, if he's weak, typically we're right-handed teams, so we put the tight end over there. What problem is it for a quarterback not knowing that he's going to have backside protection with the left tackle being out compared to other positions on the field or injured with offensive linemen?
Because if you're right-handed, you always can see what's going on to your right, all right? When you're dropping back that way, you always have a tendency to feel that pressure. You have to have this peripheral to you and always are starting to worry about what's coming from your left side. And then you'll start looking. You know, you'll start just taking a little peek. You'll take a look away from a safety moving over or a linebacker moving to a different position, and you're already off the point that you were on for the play in the first place.
So one of the things that I think's been interesting is the Browns have gotten a tremendous amount of criticism the last year and a half because people have said, oh, they traded the pick that was Carson Wentz. They could have drafted Dak Prescott at any point, really. They traded the pick that was Deshaun Watson. I think all 3 of those quarterbacks are really good, and they've shown to be really good. But I also wonder this past week when Dak had his worst game since his first game as a pro, if we saw a little glimpse of what maybe Dak would have looked like if he were with the Browns. Because the Cowboys last week, with mediocre wide receivers, with no Zeke, with no left tackle, a defense that can't stop people, it reminds you a lot of the Browns minus the left tackle, which is typically Joe Thomas. Like, do you see anything there?
Yeah, I've made this comment before. Like, if Dak Prescott is with the Cleveland Browns last year, I don't know if you see what we know as Dak Prescott, right? Yes. I mean, it's a perfect example of having everybody around you make you better. I also think that Cleveland, forgive me, Cleveland, but it's a dysfunctional organization. No matter where you go, there's been too many coaches, too many quarterbacks in play. You go to that place and you don't come out successful, which is hard to say, but the organization has shown that. It's not like the Steelers. It's not like the New England Patriots, where it doesn't matter what pieces you plug into that. They have a system and a protocol in the way they do things.
There's one thing I'm worried about with Dak, and now with Tyron, the left tackle, being injured, and that is trying to do too much. Now, you came into the league, man, they had your grade, you and Peyton Manning. It was basically a coin flip. Who are you going to take, Ryan Leaf or Peyton Manning? Also with Jared Goff and the support that he got with Sean McVay, what does it mean to have an organization or a coach or even the players around you? Because you said the Dak that we would have seen in Cleveland is a totally different. How important is that to a quarterback's development?
Huge. So I thought it was a big stretch to draft a air raid quarterback who hasn't been successful in the NFL. An air raid quarterback has never been successful in the NFL yet. And last year we kind of saw that under a Jeff Fisher regime. He wasn't able to utilize what Jared was good at.
Wait, what are you saying? A what?
Air raid. It's the style of offense.
Style of offense in college. So it's a Mike Leach, it's a Hal Mummy offense that these quarterbacks play in this air raid offense while in college, and there's never been a successful NFL version of that.
Yeah, it's a different version of the
Is that more
spread.
like pass average?
Yeah,
it's a different version of the spread.
Right. So when Jared got there, and what we're finding out more and more is we saw what Bill O'Brien did this year with Deshaun Watson. They're not trying to force their will on their quarterback anymore. They're understanding what the quarterback brings to their offense instead of trying to make it about them like Jeff Fisher may have. Sean McVay has come in and said, okay, this is what Jared Goff's really good at. I'm gonna design my offense as best I can around him and what he can do. And we've seen it week in, week out.
You keep talking about the pieces that these young quarterbacks need to have around them. You don't just mean, a good offensive line, a good running game, a solid defense. Like, talk to me a little bit more about the intangibles when you talk about the pieces in an organization to make a quarterback feel comfortable, feel confident when he's a young or he's a first round drafted guy that's going out there for the first time, who the organization is asking that person to lead this team. Talk about those different kind of pieces.
Well, you're asking a young 21-year-old to be essentially the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And what are you willing to do to, help generate that to be the case? In my case, it would have been amazing to stick like a communications director on me at all times.
Yes.
Because,
And Dallas has a great one with Dalrymple, the communications, the VP, the senior VP. He does a great job as far as screening and protecting him. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the same thing with Jared. I think that last year they just kind of fed him to the wolves. They thought they were doing him a favor by not playing him early on. And then when they did, the expectations were so high because they were such a bad football team. So what they did this offseason is you didn't hear anything about Jared Goff. You just heard that he was working really hard. You heard all about the new head coach. And even the head coach, I had dinner with him this summer before the season started, and Coach McVay said, he looks good. I don't know exactly what's going to happen until the real bullets start flying. And since they have, he's done a heck of a job.
The Jared Goff thing's really fascinating to me because I think it should be a reminder for all of us that analyze football for a living, or at least part of our living, or football fans, how much of this, all of it, is truly circumstance-based. Like, Cris, I would say one of the themes for you, we've done 51 shows now, has been that 99% of NFL players are system players. No matter how great they are, there's a few outliers. There's a Jim Brown, there's a Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders.
Dan Marino.
Right, but
they could have run a triple option with Dan Marino.
Right, but the
coach would have known to throw the ball eventually.
The vast majority of guys are system players, even the great players. And I say that in reference to Jared Goff because Jared Goff, after his first year, was being looked at as one of the biggest, I hate to use the words, busts that we've seen in the NFL. As a guy, a word that you had to deal with a lot, people throwing around at you. And then in year two, he's going to get MVP votes. And I understand you've also said the biggest progression you make is year one to year two, but this wasn't all Jared Goff getting better. It was the team signing a left tackle. It was the team bringing wide receivers. It was the coach changing what they were asking them to do.
But as Ryan said, it was also, changing the narrative a little bit. It wasn't Goff, he's going to be the next coming up. They're like, you know what? Take his name down a little bit. Maybe don't put that pressure on him. And
there's nothing wrong with with this tendency for us to go, he's a system player, is almost looked like as a negative.
Yes.
In this league, your career may be 3 years long. I'd love to be part of a system where I was successful in the NFL instead of being an outlier and going, you can't tell me that Tom Brady hasn't been in the same system for this long. I mean, he's had offensive coordinators come back to run the same system. So he's been doing it a long time. He's just very, very good at it.
Now, as we come down the stretch, give me some things that we should be looking at from Dak. If you wanted to, should he not force the ball? How should he go about with the lack of support that he's used to in finishing out this season and trying to get the Cowboys in the playoffs?
Well, there's significant talent that's going to be lost with Zeke being out, with your left tackle being out. So he's got to be that guy where he takes what they give him. But sometimes he's going to have to take bigger chances. That's just the way it's going to have to go. Because if they're going to compete, he's going to have to do things he hasn't done before because he's relied on Zeke to make those big plays and especially run the clock out when they're up.
Yes.
They won't be playing from
that 4-minute drill.
They won't be playing from ahead that often. They'll be coming from behind most likely.
All right, when you're a quarterback and you've got one wide receiver that clearly is the most physically gifted of them all, especially if he's also the highest paid of them. So Dak has that with Dez. And the numbers are just jarring. Dak throwing to everyone else and Dak throwing to Dez. Dak throws, like, his interception rate is nearly 6 times as high throwing to Dez than everyone else. Just the last 2 weeks, he's completing 75% of his passes to everyone else, 50% of his passes to Dez. Is there an extra pressure, either that you put on yourself internally or that the team puts on you, that you've got to force the ball to the guy who's supposed to be the best, the guy who's supposed to be the number one, the guy who is the highest paid, even if the production isn't matching up to that?
Well, I think there's a good example of that in what Brock Osweiler did with DeAndre Hopkins last year. All his interceptions went to him. But most likely, and Cris knows this better than anybody, you're going to get double teamed as the best receiver on the football field. They're going to say, hey, everybody else, that's who's going to beat us. We're not going to let Dez go off and be the reason we win. So they double team him by playing a lot of cover 2 to his side, maybe man up on the other side, and say, beat us. And then Dak's going to be looking in the huddle at Dez going, and Dez looking right back at him going, get me the ball, man, get me the ball. And he's going to try to force something just to get him the football like they did with DeAndre last year, and the ball's going to be intercepted most likely. You can't not go against a defense that is that good and have that kind of coverage and not be okay with going to what they give you defensively.
You have to admit, it's a good season to be following young quarterbacks. I mean, young quarterbacks are really making a statement for themselves this year, especially in a season where there's so much parity. No one knows where anyone's going. To be able to see the guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees, but also to see some of these young guys, the Goffs and the Prescotts, it's got to be a fun season for you to watch and follow.
Well, it is, because it's a passing of the torch of sorts, right? You know, these are guys that you guys talked about it. Tom's 40.
Yep.
Drew's going to be 39. This is amazing. They're my age, and I've been out of the game a long, long time. The fact that they're still doing it at a very, very high level is so impressive. And these young guys see it's possible, and they put in the work ethic. I think that's huge. To lose Deshaun this year, I think, was very devastating for the league, because he was going to give you that new wave of quarterbacks coming up, and they're doing an amazing job.
Now, quickly, before we leave, give us a little preview on several of the quarterbacks in college that we should be excited about for the teams out there losing, going to be at the top of the draft.
Talking to you, Giants.
and several other teams. Give us a couple of these names that we'll be looking for in April's draft.
Well, I think early on, everybody was high on Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and the young kid from Wyoming, Josh Allen. And none of them have really lived up to the expectations, though they were very lofty expectations, don't get me wrong. Sam Darnold may have to show that he's smart by staying in school to learn more, do something similar to what Peyton Manning did. Come back for that senior year, try to win a championship, be the leader, and learn more and how not to turn the ball over as much as he's done this year. I really think that the standalone quarterback right now has been Baker Mayfield. I don't care what anybody has to say about size or anything. He reminds me of Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson. His ability to move inside the pocket, and if he needs to get out and make plays, and he's a leader. And that's, for me, that's all I need if I'm drafting a quarterback, because you have no idea exactly who's going to be successful.
He's going to win the Heisman, and a lot of people love him as a college quarterback. You like him as a pro as well.
I do. I think we just talked about this. It depends on where you go. If he goes to Cleveland, he's going to have a difficult time being a star quarterback in this league. But if he goes to, let's say, the Patriots draft him late in the first round because they're going to have a high pick.
The Giants.
The Giants early in the second round.
Right.
That's a difficult thing to understand with the Giants, because, what are you going to do next? Eli Manning, are you telling him, hey, this is where we're at. It's the end of the road. You know, Kurt Warner, they did it with Kurt Warner, brought in Eli when they drafted him, and Kurt went on to play in a Super Bowl a little bit later. So it will be interesting. I think it'll be a great fall and a great spring when it comes to the draft.
And finally, Lonzo Ball's struggles continued last night. The rookie shot 3 for 10 from the field. He only had 7 points. He was benched in the fourth quarter. The Lakers did go on to beat the Suns 193 while Lonzo watched from the sideline. So, Nick, was benching Lonzo in the fourth quarter the right move in your opinion?
Life's all about what you're trying to achieve. And so the only way to answer this question is you have to ask yourself, what were the Lakers trying to achieve? If their number one prerogative yesterday and this season is to win as many games as possible, then yes, it was the right move. He wasn't playing well. They were only up 1. They ended up winning by 7. Clarkson played really well. I get it. But if your number one prerogative is to develop the best asset your team has, if your number one prerogative is to try to put yourself in position as soon as possible to compete for a championship, which would mean Lonzo Ball developing as quickly as possible, then no, I want Lonzo Ball playing fourth quarters of tight games. I want Lonzo Ball struggling in real time and coming through it.
Yeah, the Lakers are at least 3 miracles away from competing for a championship. I'm talking about 3 miracles. They need 3 other stars. They have no stars. Ball is not a star. Ingram is not a star. They're just young players. We don't know what type of pro arc they'll have. I'm not giving up on Lonzo, but at that point in the game, if you're watching the game, and when you start the fourth quarter, this is their first road trip. All right, they lost 3 in a row. All right, they decided it's a close game. Let's try to win the game. Clarkson played outstanding. And Ball is a liability in defense. So if you're just trying to put him out there just to play minutes, to develop him, there's also a thing called confidence. So the more you lose your confidence, the less you're going to develop. Now, having him on the bench didn't kill his confidence. And he said after the game, he said the right thing, that it's about winning. Winning is more important, and when the team wins, I don't mind.
Do you think that keeping him out there is going to help him sort of suddenly find that shot and change the mechanics of the shot that he has taken for his entire life?
No, that is not something he's going to be able to do during this season. You cannot change a shot mechanic during the year. You might not be able to change it at all, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the offseason, where he can improve offensively, because his assist to turnover numbers are still good, even though they weren't great last night. I think it was 5 assists to 4 turnovers. That he can finish better at the rim.
He can't get to the bucket.
But when he is getting to the bucket, CC's not finishing.
Well, this is the thing. He's not a great athlete. He doesn't have great lift, all right? He can't play above the rim. So it's hard to be a positional player. To me, he reminds me, people say, oh, he's the next Jason Kidd. He reminds me a bigger version of Rondo than me, a guy who couldn't shoot, all right, and couldn't shoot, all right, just a bigger version of Rondo early in his career.
Listen, Rondo, I'm thinking about that comparison, and I'm saying, ooh, not because it's a bad comparison, but because if that's where this ends up for Lonzo Ball, and Rondo had like 2 extraordinary seasons, but that's a disappointment. And you know what? Your point's a good one. Guy that can rebound, a guy that is an excellent distributor, but never learned to shoot, never became.
And Rondo's a better defender.
Wait, quickly, what is Lonzo really, really good at? And then we're moving on.
Passing.
What do you love about him?
Passing.
Is it enough to make him a superstar? Just being an amazing passer?
Well, he's got to develop. Right now, he's nowhere close to being a superstar. Right now, he's nowhere close to being an average NBA player. I would just play him in fourth quarters so we can get that experience. I understand your point.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.